Yay, we're here. It is another Friday, and it is hopefully a night of no storms. Peaceful night.
Right.
Even though we have been under flash flood warnings for about 2 weeks now. Anyway. But that's a whole nother story and a whole nother topic. Now, tonight we actually have an amazing show for everyone, and we can't wait to get into it. We might have, no orange sky bunnies, Evie. We might have another guest pop in. I don't know. If not, we'll harass her big time afterwards. But for those who don't know, today is a national day. Do you know what national day it is today?
National Donut Day?
Wow, you are absolutely right. It is National Donut Day.
I wish you wouldn't put them up there.
Doesn't that make you just want a donut?
I'd love to have one. Thank you.
I'll be honest with you. None of these donuts intrigue me.
The chocolate one does.
I became a fan of the baked cake version.
I like the baked cake version.
Yeah, those are really good.
Yep. I really, really want to go to Dunkin' and get a nice hot cup of tea and a donut. Or a blueberry muffin.
Blueberry muffins would be Spud Nuts. God, I haven't heard of Spud Nuts in a long time, Evie. Yeah. I
don't think I've ever heard of Spud Nuts.
Oh, yeah. It's their... If I remember right, they're the donut holes with nuts, if I recall right.
No.
Sure. Let's see if she responds with that and confirms or denies that. But
well, I haven't been to Dunkin' in over 2 years.
Wow. We have one across the street away.
We got them around here. I want to. Every time I go to the grocery store, I pass it and it's like, I really should stop there. And then I just go to the grocery store and then come back. I have a lot of willpower.
Spud Nuts are made with potato flour. I forgot about that.
Are they really good?
You know how long it's been since I've had one of those? It's not common. There's so many types of different flour. There's almond flour. The works. I saw peanut flour not too long ago. I was like, huh? So apparently everything can get turned into flour.
I guess you just grind it up.
Right? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So it's just, it's, but yeah, so National Donut Day. Who sits back? This is my thing. I have to know this. Who sits back and says, today is the national, yes, I've seen that one too. Today is the national whatever day.
Excuse me. Ew.
It's true, though. It is very true.
Well, you go right ahead. You can have my share.
Yeah, mine too, because I won't even try it.
Well, they're probably going to have cicada flour.
They might already do.
Overabundance of those things this year.
Yeah, well, they might already do. I would not be surprised. I mean, if they've come up with cricket flour, that's another one. Who just sits back and says, I think I'm going to put this in my mouth and see how it tastes? I just can't.
Nah.
Yeah. But, no, back to the national days. Who comes up with those? Who decides, today is a national whatever day?
I don't know. I like to know whose job it is to name streets.
Yeah. That's a good point too, because there's some of those streets that actually, from what I understand, most of them are because of the city. The city actually votes on those, so you could find out through each one. But yeah,
yeah, I got a really weird street name. We're on Embleton. Embleton. Embleton.
Okay.
Like, huh?
Yeah. So, okay, tomorrow, June 5th, you ready for this? It's quite a few national days. It's National Gingerbread Day, National Moonshine Day, National Veggie Burger Day. Go ahead and break out one. First, now these other ones are because they're the first Saturday in June. National Black Bear Day, National Bubbly Day, National Prairie Day, and National Trails Day. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And thanks, Sarah. I wish you would just sit there and don't say anything, okay? My constitution is really anyway right now.
Yeah, well, I have to mention this because I can't remember which show we did, but somebody actually made a very good point about the bugs in peanut butter.
I don't want to hear it.
Do you know that the FDA has a percentage of allowed bugs to be in the food when they're being processed? And this is more than just peanut butter. I mean, they know it happens, so yeah. All right. So if everybody else just cringed,
I'm not eating anything anymore. I'll starve.
Well, let's see. We recently had Memorial Day. For those who don't know, June 6th is D-Day. So there'll be some folks still kind of doing memory of the men and women who served in in the armed forces, especially during such times, if there are still survivors. But you have to remember that we always talk about freedom is not free. And this is because the men and women who actually go and fought in the wars to help us, give us a chance to sleep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask a stupid question. I mean, so much of history I don't know, even though I should, which I'm ashamed to say. Is that the Saving Private Ryan D-Day when they went?
Well, it's the landing in Normandy. So I would assume, okay, now here's where I'm going to get myself in trouble. I never watched Saving Private Ryan.
Oh my gosh. You need to see that movie.
Why?
The beginning will totally freak you out.
But they already said it in the title. They saved him.
Yeah, but what they go through to save him.
Anyway, I mean, come on. I've watched Band of Brothers every episode, and
I got that, by the way. I think my son gave it to my father. It's sitting downstairs. I've never seen it.
Right.
Is it good?
Yeah, it was actually really good. Really, really good. For those who might miss out, we want to say a special happy birthday to Jimmy, who yesterday was his birthday. And
Mr. Haunted, my buddy Jimmy. I have known him over 20 years.
Wow.
I know. We go way back.
Yeah, that is a pretty good distance. Wow. I don't know if I know anybody for 20 years. Well, I guess my family. Anyway.
Yeah.
So tonight we're going to talk about...
Sarah's birthday's next week. What day?
Yeah, really? What day? Well, I forget there's a delay.
I think she's not going to say.
I don't think she is either. Okay. Oh, the 8th.
Happy birthday for next... Oh, the 8th. Okay.
Yeah. Which will be on a Tuesday.
And I will have a new granddaughter with a birthday next week.
Yes, you will. So congratulations to both of y'all.
Yeah. When you see commence pacing on my Facebook thing, everybody just hold their breath.
Well, let's start on what we're going to be discussing this week. One of the things that was brought up to me was actually two theories, okay? One is actually a theory, the other one is a paradox. And what's interesting about them is they both hold the same name, and they both have some form of reality. One is over all the others. Now, the first one is the bootstrap theory. You've heard of this, right?
After you told me about it. And I looked it up and did all that, and you gave me a headache. Well, I do. Your eyes roll around. It's like, what the?
Right.
Right.
Well, to be honest with you, though, the bootstrap theory is not an uncommon theory that actually happens every day today, and for a long time. Now, if you want to go with the fallacy of it, nobody can technically pick themselves up by their bootstraps. Okay?
Well,
yeah.
It's a saying, but...
Yeah, but...
It's a bootstrap, actually.
Yeah, well, I actually was going to bring my boots in, and I was going to show you. Bootstraps are actually the straps that go around the outside of the boots, and it helps them.
Oh, that little hoodie that sticks up?
Yeah, and that's actually designed to help pull your boots on.
Boots on, yeah. Okay, gotcha.
So, and of course, there's other kind that have the little, I don't know, a little hoop in the back, and you can use that to pull your shoe on or boot on. Okay, yeah, because most people don't often wear boots. The point of the theory here is that people tend to pick themselves up and take themselves out of bad situations. Okay, right. For example, and this is actually considered to be one of the pillars of American mythology, is the bootstrap theory of self-improvement and personal progress. Now, in this thinking, the individuals pull themselves up to a better station of life by their own bootstraps. What this is more is another way of saying they have that personal initiative or that personal drive to just finally get up and get out of there. Some great examples of said theories are people who've grown up in very bad neighborhoods, and they say, I'm getting out of this neighborhood, I'm getting a better education, whatever their goals are, they do it, and they literally succeed. Well, this is called the bootstrap theory. It takes them up out of that situation. And I'm reading and talking at the same time because I saw her little comment and I'm thinking, is that started already? Sorry. Okay, this is her comment. But not quite that.
Okay, I'm going to sound really stupid. Who's Loki?
Do you not watch Marvel?
I don't like that kind of stuff, no.
Okay, well, then I won't try to explain. Loki is the brother of Thor.
I know who Thor is.
Okay, well, then you should know who Loki is. The god of mischief. Anyway.
Oh, well, anywho, moving on.
So when you talk about the bootstrap theory, it is actually a positive theory in an extent of telling people you can do it. It comes with self-motivation. It comes with well, not everybody has a motivation. Let's rephrase that. I mean, a lot of them might just have a goal, and it's that goal that they use to get themselves out of there. Yes, Evie, it is part of Norse mythology, but the whole point is it is an actual deal that is not commonly talked about anymore. A lot of people don't talk about the bootstrap theory anymore. It's everything's changing. Everybody's giving new names because, it's either offensive or it's not politically correct or it's not real.
Excuse me 1 minute.
Okay. But, bless you.
Thank you.
But the truth of the matter is, the bootstrap theory is an actual event that people go through. And, okay, so she mentions that it's also breaking energetic patterns or cycles. And this is true. It can be for that too. The point of it all is that somebody makes the effort. They do what they have to pull themselves up out of that scenario they're in.
Sorry about that.
So that's exactly where that comes in. Now, as I said, there is a fallacy to it where some say you can't physically pull yourself up from a bootstrap because there's no such thing as levitation in that way, or what some might call self-levitation.
They're taking it literally, not figuratively.
Yeah, I know, and that's we got to get to that. I have to throw that out there. Now, let's use another term. Like when you go to the hospital, you're looking for a solution to a health problem that you have, and the focus is on care and recovery whenever possible. Now, all the language points in that direction. When you go to college, however, it's a position as a challenge. Okay? So you have health and a challenge. Now, if you meet the challenge and pass, we say you have persisted. And persistence defines learning as a struggle, a burden, basically the learner must bear successfully to get ahead. Persistence is also treated as the responsibility of the learner, not a shared responsibility with others. And we can see that with individuals who do pick themselves up out of situations and so forth. And as you said, drives, ambitions, strong motivators. Now, I threw that little bit in there because I wanted to kind of let people know there is the two. But I mentioned also there is another bootstrap. This one deals with something that, we haven't quite touched base with yet. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Time travel.
Woo.
Yeah. This is called the bootstrap paradox. Now, easy way to put it is like this. You get a ring at the doorbell. Okay? You answer the door and there's a package with a book. The book itself tells you how to build a time machine. Okay? Then you, 20 years later down the road, successfully build this time machine and go back in time and decide to give yourself that book. This is the paradox. The first part is where'd the book come from in the first place? Who? Well, that's a question we don't know. I mean, if you did not do that, and I'll tell you the paradox part of this here in just a second, but if you did not give yourself the book in the first place, then now you're altering a timeline. Okay? But wait, there's more. Let's take, for example, you do make a time machine and you do go back into time and you decide to write and compose all the music, copy over what Beethoven did, and you pretend to deliver that music and become Beethoven. Did you alter anything? One thing, you altered who actually was Beethoven. But other than that, you really kind of didn't change anything. You just basically got credit for something you didn't do. So that is a version of the paradox that some people say is, that's not the reality of it. The actual understanding of it is, let's put it like this. Let's see, how can I give you the best way? Well, let's go back to the book part when you building the time machine, okay? A couple of things would be wrong with this. One, you're altering, potential futures, or you're saying that time is already designed. It's not got an ending to it, or you can't change it. You can't change the future, basically. But another thing is if you took that book, send it to yourself in the past, then and it keeps cycling through, what happens to the book? Doesn't the book age? Yeah, eventually that book becomes unreadable, unless you rewrite it and then start it through a cycle again, but the original book eventually is no more. But then if some people use the theory that, well, when you send the book back into the past, the book becomes brand new, then guess what else happens? You yourself don't change, you change as well going into the past. If you go back to a time, say, of Beethoven and you weren't born and don't exist, and you're saying that changes, okay, that's not funny. But, if the book goes to a young version, what happens to you when you go past your timeline? You cease to exist.
Exactly.
So that's a version of the paradox that a lot of people are talking about.
Okay, kind of like if you think of the Terminator. The movie The Terminator.
Right. There's very paradox.
That's just I've tried to actually sit down and think about that sometime, and it's.
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of a couple of places that, okay, maybe movies like the original Planet of the Apes. That would be a Bootstrap paradox. Oh, definitely Doctor Who. I mean, he's going. Star Trek is another.
Okay, there's an episode of Supernatural when the guy, I can't remember his name. He's one of the angels, but he undid the sinking of the Titanic. So the people, their descendants were still alive. Some people that were dead are alive now. But if they would go back and correct it, because the people did start dying, or like Final Destination.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, let's take an EV says Castiel.
It's not Castiel. It's the the British. He's British.
We'll figure it out.
I can't think of his name.
Well, let's take the Titanic for an example. if the Titanic had never sank, the FCC wouldn't be what it is today. The FCC was created even more, put more into effect to help, like radio waves and so forth become a bigger and stronger entity so they could call for help in such situations. Because if you recall, they could only reach so far with their radio.
With the Morse code?
Even with that, yeah, it just would not go far enough. Only somebody within a certain distance could be able to hear it. So that's what the Titanic, even though it was a tragic event, it created another event to help. Okay, so
a lot of those things do. Like I watched that TV show Air Disasters, and they always seem to learn something from what happened. And
right. So let's take an example. I'm going to give you a great example. Let's say you want to alter something in your past. We'll go with, everybody uses this same one. They don't want to be with their ex. That would be the end of that.
Yeah.
Go and change that. Okay. But let's say you and your ex have children. Now,
exactly.
If you alter that you never meet with that person, guess what else doesn't happen?
They're not put. Tom and I were actually talking about this last night when I was telling him about what we were going to do. And I said, well, I didn't really want to marry him, but at that time it was kind of too late.
Right.
To do that. I was telling my mom, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And she said, well, you don't have to. I was like, well, you spent all this money. So I went through it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I got three lovely kids. I got grandkids. They would, if I would have just told them to take a hike.
Well, let me ask another question. Can people tell the future? And there's a reason I asked that, because somebody put it in there already in the comments. So I'm going to put it up there. And do you know that The Simpsons have, what have they been on for, more than
30 some years, yeah.
So they've so-called predicted the future. Okay? So can somebody actually predict the future? Now, like Evie says, they can estimate the outcomes, and I can do the same thing. I can estimate stuff by different, factors. You put the factors in, and you can kind of almost figure it out. Like, for example, if you want to play the lottery, because like the number one question is if a psychic can tell the future, then how come they're not rich? Meaning they couldn't. And I've always heard, it doesn't work like that. Well, why wouldn't it work like that? Because things can still change. Futures are not set. The greatest line was Back to the Future at the very end, when everything was changing, and Doc Brown said, the future's not set. You can still alter your future by making choices. Okay? But let's take a look at something here. I wanted to throw this in because this would kind of make you wonder about the Bootstrap paradox. The Simpsons, in quite a few episodes, predicted certain things to come up, like the presidency of Donald Trump, correctly predicting the Super Bowl. Okay, now that one makes you have to wonder, okay, how many people placed a bet when that one came up? Disney buying Fox. Now that took a while. That was a very long dispute. And a lot of people didn't want that to happen. But here's another one that I would have to ask, who would have ever could have put the stuff together to say this was going to happen? Smartwatches.
Stopwatches?
Smartwatches.
Smartwatches. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Who would have put that together to say that is the future? I mean, granted, we hear the people argue between Star Wars and Star Trek and which one is the real science type stuff, and I'm not bringing it up to create an argument, but I'm trying to point out that even both movies, we have gotten pieces of future technology already into play. So you have to say, okay, but that was just people. I mean, yeah, look, Back to the Future showed flying cars. Do we actually have that yet? Not the way they showed it. But, I mean, it's just the way they are. So I'm looking at some of the other ones here just to kind of throw out there because I wanted to. Oh, that's the one. Faulty voter machines. I mean, I just want to know how the writers came up with it and said, this is how that's going to happen. I mean, it makes you wonder.
Well, yeah. It also can maybe whoever decides to do this afterwards gets their ideas from The Simpsons.
Right. Well, I want to kind of throw in some things. Okay, so first, it is believed that in order to travel back or forward in time, one would require a device called a time machine. There's just pretty much nothing else. And since you already told me you don't watch any of the Marvel movies, you'll just have to bear with me on this, because in one of them, they actually kind of show a particular loop that helped create time travel. Now, the research on such a device, the time machine, would involve bending space and time to such an extent that timelines turn back on themselves. So if you think about it, you look at yes, exactly, just like H.G. Wells. And I loved Warehouse 13, where H.G. Wells was a woman.
Henrietta Georgetta Wells.
Yeah, something like that. So, okay. But here's the thing. The forming it to loop on itself is called a closed time-like curve. Okay, so what you would have saw, the design that Tony Stark comes up with in the Avengers movie to create that time would be almost what they would say. But in most cases, when it's brought up, they kind of look at it as a donut-shaped deal, and then of course the center would be like a vacuum and so forth. Well, that's
Star Trek.
Yeah.
The one with Joan Collins in it, and they go through the giant donut, like Randy's donut.
A long time ago,
and he has to let her die because otherwise, if she would have lived, the Enterprise would never have been there.
Right. Well, see, and that's kind of where the paradox comes in. Yes, I am talking about Endgame. If you look at the way it is, and like I said, if you said, "Oh, I had a horrible this, and this," I would love to go back and change that. And as I said, you adore your children, but if you go back and you end that scenario with your ex, you just created a whole new timeline. And guess what? The children. I
wouldn't have been married to Tom either,
Right. And so a lot changes. Your history changes, everything, so everything, the whole time, it's just a whole new timeline. So, you have to look at that. Now, I wanted to throw in some real science with this, because there's so many parts where it kind of breaks up. But I contacted our resident NASA rocket scientist. Yes, she's a real rocket scientist. And I asked her about the bootstrap paradox. Now, she never heard of the term before. And of course, why would you? Because they're not really looking at doing time travel. So, but she did say she looked it up and discovered it refers to causality loops. Okay? Remember what I said. If you decided to change your past, it also changes your future. So that's the causality part. She said, offhand, I know of no physical laws it would break. It would do a number on the world lines. So, but the great news is that it wouldn't break physical laws, but it would, as I said, change timeline laws. So if you were a fan of Endgame and you saw how they talked about changing the future by going into the past and doing certain things and then going back and replacing those things at their specific time they were changed, it would put everything back. The paradox here is if you went to the past, took away something to change the future, and then go back and put it back, which timeline comes back? The original one. A paradox. This is why it's literally called a paradox, because it changes. Things don't happen the way they're supposed to be. It's a change in just a whole timeline altogether. Now, I know some people say, well, there's many different indicators, many different things, but let's take a look at something, an actual study. Now, this is done by student affairs administrators in higher education, also known as NASPA. Don't ask me what that stands for because I don't have that open at the moment to tell you exactly what that is. But they did talk about this, and I want to read what they wrote. Now, this was an article written back in July of 2015 by Jabari Bodrick. So sorry if I slaughtered your name. He says, many people inside and outside of the academy seem to be firm believers in the bootstrap narrative. The bootstrap narrative is essentially the belief that a person in the United States who works hard, assumes personal responsibility, and maintains a strong moral center. Are we looking at the right one? Hold on. This is for the first one. My bad. Okay, I'm out of order on my pages. This was for the theory, the bootstrap theory. And this was their look at it. And he says in 2013, 9% of students from low-income families earned bachelor degrees by the age of 24, in contrast to the 77% of students from the wealthier families. So look at that. 9% of low income were able to pull themselves up. So that shows where the bootstrap theory alters. It doesn't quite hold weight to what a lot of people believed in. So apologies though, because that did go outside of what I was trying to do, and I don't know why that came up in that order. Okay. An example of a bootstrap paradox. The best one, I mean, there's so many, but let's say it involves information that would be if a time traveler went back in time, taught Einstein the theory of relativity before returning to his own time. Now, Einstein claims it his own work, and over the following decades, the theory is published countless of times until a copy of it eventually ends up in your hands, being the original time traveler. And then, guess what? you start over and you go back into time to talk to Einstein. Now, this begs the question, where did the theory originate? Who brought the original theory? Did you bring the original theory, or did Einstein bring the original theory? Remember what I was talking about in the beginning about the book? Where'd the book come from? See, this is where that paradox begins. Okay, so we cannot say that it came from the time traveler as he learned it from who? Einstein.
Yeah, I would say it had to come from Einstein because you wouldn't know it unless it was already out there.
Exactly. But we also cannot say that it came from Einstein since he was taught by the time traveler. Oh, so now...
Would it actually exist with the time traveler if Einstein didn't do it in the first place?
See, this is the paradox. Now, you think about it, you put it together, and you start to wonder, can this actually happen? Well, let's say, for sake of argument at the moment, yes, it could. But let's say it works on another theory, something that we're talking about doing in the future here, parallel universes.
Don't go in there yet.
Well, I'm just using it for an example right now. But you go back in a time, but the timeline that you go back to is on another universe, a parallel universe. Do you alter your timeline? No, because you're technically altering their timeline. You see what I mean? So the theory is it could work if the belief of parallel universes were there as well. And so then, you're changing one timeline, but not yours. And then, of course, you probably sit back and say, well, nothing happened. But I was talking to another guy about this, and one thing that I did come up with, and I wanted to kind of throw this out there too, and you tell me what you think. But let's say I could go back into the past. And the goal is to go do as Evie mentioned earlier, Biff from Back to the Future. Go back into the past, bid on all these games that we know are going to be victories in the future, and then come back to the future and be rich, right? Well, what if something happens? How do you know that that's going to maintain? Things could happen. Maybe you go back and you say, I'm gonna bid on the Yankees. They're going to win this season because you know what it is, you know from your future. But when you go back, something happens, and all of a sudden the Yankees don't even make it to the playoffs. See, one event could be changed.
There is a really good book by Dean Koontz. Have you ever read any of Dean Koontz stuff?
Yeah, it's been a while, but yes.
I think it's called Lightning.
Okay.
It's about back during World War II, the Germans created this time machine, and the one guy, he went to the future and saw this woman so beautiful and intelligent and stuff, and she was in a wheelchair, and he kept jumping back and forth to save her life, because actually at one point she was killed when she was supposed to be a child, when she was a teenager, and on different things. And it even started even before she was born. He went, and the doctor that was to deliver her was an alcoholic, and he was going to botch the delivery up, which would put her in a wheelchair. So he kept jumping forward to change her life. but during the course of her life, she would have accidents and would end up back in the wheelchair, and he would have to keep going and going and going. He actually had visited Winston Churchill in his war room and trying to explain to him some things, but he didn't want to tell him too much that would alter the course of the future.
Right.
Churchill didn't believe him, so he had brought some books with him of things that he was going to say or whatever. Nothing that would actually change the future of World War II. But he did not leave the books with him because he, as I said, he didn't want him to alter the future.
Right.
But then he actually went. You ought to read it if anybody's out there. It's a really good book. It's called
It makes a good point too, though, because people have talked about if they could go in the past and change things for Hitler. Well, it's like the cloning scenario. If you could clone him, put him through the same scenarios, how are you sure that it's going to produce the same effect? He could be one of those percentages in the bootstrap theory that we were talking about that changes and says, I don't want to go through that. I want to live a better life. You see?
Right. And then we'd end up with the Star Trek episode where people are don't even exist because you could change the one little tiny thing, which would snowball and poof.
Yeah.
Gone.
Exactly. And so that's where the paradox is constant. You kind of always see that. Yeah, I remember that movie. In Minority Report, they were able to predict a crime before it actually happened, and then the people were being arrested with the intent to create this crime. But that would also go against a certain law that says people are innocent until proven guilty, even though courts today or judges and all that kind of still alter that rule and stop people from,
Right. Okay. So they kill the killers before they actually kill somebody, but the people that they killed also might be a bad person or something that would kill other people.
Doctor Who. I like to watch Doctor Who. And
I like that thing that you sent me.
Yeah. Well, something that they always explain in Doctor Who is a fixed point in time. So, for example, if the girl or the lady that was in the wheelchair was meant to be in the wheelchair, you try to alter that fixed point still finds its way in. Is that a paradox? Is that is that something that's set for sure? We don't know. We really don't. And it's kind of hard to say this is what's going to happen. Doctors come in many a times have told people, I'm sorry, but you have cancer, and we could try chemo. They say all the things they can do, but then things like now CBD oil, which is helping literally change a lot with people with cancer, and so there certain treatments, certain therapies, certain things are changing so much that we come to a point now where we can't really say, I'm sorry, but you only have 5 hours to live. It's kind of like the doctor who walks in and he's got this sad look on his face, and he looks at the guy and he says, I'm sorry, you don't have much longer to live. And he says, well, what do you mean, doctor? How much longer do I have? 5 days? 5 weeks? 5 hours? 4? For what? 3? Nobody can actually predict it that way unless they're the ones, forgive the pun in this, but pulling the trigger. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
those Final Destination movies are also like that, but because death finally comes around and gets them, and they all it fixes itself.
That wasn't that terrible.
Well, yeah. Okay, if anybody has seen Final Destination 2.
No. She's referring to the joke.
Oh.
But I do agree. I have watched the Final Destination movies. And
nobody gets behind a log truck.
That one was wicked. I thought that was...
Yeah.
Or The Kid Under the Glass. That was
Yeah, 3 with the roller coaster. I don't get on roller coasters anymore after seeing that.
Well, movies are movies. I don't.
Oh, I know, but
last time I got on,
nobody gets behind log trucks.
Yeah, well, that's true. Last time I got on a roller coaster, it was the oldest roller coaster in Texas, at least wooden roller coaster. Let me rephrase it. And I thought, it'll be fine. Let me tell you something. If they don't have headrests nowadays, don't get on it. Because all I had was whiplash. As tall as I am, I mean, it just, oh, God, my neck hurt.
I know. I don't do that, though. But I unfortunately saw that before we went down to the ocean. And they have, like, the pier and the boardwalk and the roller coaster. And Tom loves roller coasters. Being a good wife, I went with him. But I had bruises on my forearms. I was just holding on so tight. I mean, I was black and blue. I was really shocked. It's like, no more. Mm-mm.
Right. So, I
know my future does not include roller coasters.
Yeah, mine doesn't either. Let's look at something. And again, this could be solutions to this. Working on assumptions of an immutable timeline in which the circle of events are identical every time, like the somewhere in time example.
Right, that was good.
Yeah. Especially the best way is if you've never seen it in the very beginning. He's handed this aged pocket watch. And she says, "Come back to me." And he later learns he was somewhere in the past. So one solution may be to assume that somehow you've been reversed by time travel, although this may also suggest that the matter which comprised Christopher Reeves himself would also have subsequently been restored to its 1912 state when he returned to the past. Sorry, spoilers if you've never seen this movie. Which, of course, he discovered that he was there. Well, let's say, according to Russian professor Novikov, I hope I said that right, as the second law of thermodynamics is thought to be a statistical law and not an absolute one, making spontaneous reversals of or failure to increase improbable, but not impossible. See, meaning it is possible. And so the second law of thermodynamics applies only to a system isolated by the external world. Now, he does argue, and this is a quote from him, in the case of macroscopic objects like the watch whose world lines form closed loops, the outside world can expend energy to repair where that the object acquires over the course of its history, so that it will be back to its original condition when it closes the loop. So basically what he's saying is, she handed him the old watch. And when he goes back into time, it repairs itself and becomes young again. That goes back to the other part where we're talking about the book. If you're sending yourself a book on how to, build a time machine, an active time machine, that's how that would get. What about radiocarbon dating? Anything created in the future will have radioactive signatures if sent before the 50s. Yeah, that is a possibility. But if we're going by, this professor's theories, then no, because what he's saying is it possibly could repair itself. So for those who are wondering if I'm just talking to myself, there's a question that I'm answering. So if we go by his theory, then it's repairing itself. And then think about this too. The timeline in the movie is, if I remember right, we said it earlier, 1912. People aren't knowing to check for radioactivity really that big around that time. They're not going to go up to you and say, "Oh, you're from the future. You're just radioactive." Unless you're glowing at nighttime, then that's another story.
Good giveaway.
Right. But it makes a good point. But then again, depending on where you go into the past, now if I go to the future and come back to now and tell them that I was from the future, maybe now today's time they could check that. The radioactivity, because we don't know what radioactivity is going to be like in the future, right? It could be worse because as we're building more whatever, it could be producing more radioactivity and stuff. But that, I had to throw that part in because here's an actual professor who uses the second law of thermodynamics as a possible answer to say that the bootstrap paradox could technically happen. And he uses a great movie. If you've never seen it, it's called Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeves and Jane Seymour. Very good movie. And as I said, he learned when he goes to the Grand Hotel that he was in the past. So if you learn that you were in the past, you want to figure out how to get back there or something. Now, the only thing about this particular movie is he didn't use a time machine.
More like astral projection, maybe?
I want to say it was something like that. He willed himself into the past. And of course, they do mention that the one guy said, if you were to do it, I wouldn't bring anything from today's timeline. And it was a good point because, yeah. Anyway, so you kind of get an idea where the paradox fits, where the people will balance in. But again, you get two great scientific views on the paradox and the possibility of time travel and so forth. What could happen? What is your take? What do you think?
Me? Oh, yeah. I told you it's mind-numbing. To actually try to sit there and figure it out. And the least little thing that you would do or could do back then could backfire and screw everything up. And I'm going to sneeze again. I'm sorry.
Well, something I did bring up while I was doing this, and I wanted to see if I could find it again. And there it is. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to, I thought I saved this picture, but I really didn't. So we're going to bring it up here in just a second. And I want to share with everyone how it would look. So if you needed to, oh, wow. Just, okay, sorry, it's blurry. But I'm going to try my best to point it out and explain as we do this, okay? So, first part is that a time machine is built. Now, ignore the X for a moment. I'm sorry. The time machine is built. You go back into time. You meet your grandfather before he, produces one of your parents. And you kill him. Well, guess what? Now you're not born, and the time machine is not made. So the line ends there. So this is how the paradox technically works, is like what you're seeing here. Now, I apologize again because the picture is blurry, because if I go to its original size, it's that little. So
it makes sense. Your description of it is fine.
Right. So, but this is how most people view the paradox. As I said, so I mean, at a certain point, you create a new timeline, which, if you do it like what they're saying, now this one's kind of brutal, but if you go with what they're saying, you kill your grandfather, then you begin to cease to exist, almost like Marty McFly disappearing at the end of the first Back to the Future. So that's just one way of looking at it, but that puts it all in the summary. You guys that are watching, go ahead and write in the comments what your theory is, and what do you believe that the paradox could actually happen. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll be back again next time with more paranormal. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.